So today, our lesson is all about building a model of the ocean zones. My name is Marianne. I am the education director at the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy. We are a nonprofit that is based in Chatham, down on Cape Cod, which is a region of Massachusetts, and we work in white shark conservation. So even though we've been talking about other species of sharks, for us, our organization, we are focused on white sharks, these apex predators, and really making sure that when all of you kiddos at home grow up and you want to be shark biologists one day, we still have these animals in our ocean so that you can go ahead and you can study them. And so when we talk about sharks or any of the animals that are living in our oceans, okay, they travel to different depths, and there's different parts of our ocean that we, split up and we look at, and this is what we call our ocean zones, okay? So this image here really lays out and explains and shows how as we get deeper and deeper, all right, some things are gonna change, and that's why we have these different sections, all right? So the first thing to think about is when we're up here at the surface, which that first zone in our ocean at the surface is called the sunlight zone. If we start traveling downward, looking at the twilight, the midnight, the abyss, do you think the temperature is going to increase as we go deeper, or do you think it's going to decrease? What do you think is going to happen as we start diving deeper down in the ocean? Do you think that water, the temperature, is going to get warmer, or do you think it's going to get colder? All right, so for our folks who are saying that that temperature is going to get colder, you are correct, okay? As we start going deeper in our ocean, we are going to see that temperatures start to decrease, okay? And I'll come back to this one after. But when we start looking at, those states of matter and talking about temperature, all right, we know our ocean, anything is made up of molecules. All right, and so if we look at this picture here, all right, and let's say we are in fact talking about water. We know water can come in these three different states. So when it is in a gas state, that temperature is usually warmer, right? And because it's warmer, that heat, which is really energy, all right, so that warmer temperature, that heat, that causes all those molecules to move around really, really fast, okay? And so what we see all the way over here on the right, that gas stage, you see those molecules all moving quickly. And then in the liquid, they're still moving. There's still some warmth to it there, right? But then when it gets to that solid and it's really good and cold, and we're talking about temperature, notice how compact all of those molecules become. So when we're looking about how heat, all right, and looking at temperature, so temperature being the measurement of the amount of heat, the amount of energy, you can really see here how as that temperature, the amount of energy is going to change, it's going to affect the way the molecules are. Now, if you were with us, all right, last week we did a lesson on density. Density is looking at the amount of molecules, the amount of matter that is in, amount of mass that's in, a area per unit volume, okay? So looking at this and really starting to see how temperature can affect these different things and how these molecules are going to move. This hopefully, as we just talked about, how as we go deeper and we increase, as we go down in depth, we're going to see that temperature start to decrease, all right? It's going to get colder as we dive deeper down into the ocean. And so that means those ocean molecules, all right, are going to become more compact, which means as we get deeper into our ocean there, all right, we're going to see that density start to increase. So the water that is down, because it's a colder temperature at depths in our ocean in those lower zones, they have that higher density to them, okay? And when we also, as we go down, all right, think about all that water that's piled up on top of it. That means there's also more pressure acting on the water that's at those ocean zones that are closer to our seafloor, the trench, the abyss, all right? There's much more pressure down in that section because we have all that ocean on top of it pushing down on it and generating that pressure. So when you see these two jars that we have in front of you, jar A and jar B, and we talk about the amount of pressure that's pushing down, all right, B would be more of a representation of what we see at the bottom of our ocean, okay? That's why we put that anglerfish, a deep water fish, over there on B, because that really demonstrates how all that pressure that's pushing down all right, is going to affect those molecules. So again, when we're looking at the ocean zones and we're talking about the water, since the amount of pressure is increasing as we go deeper, the temperature is decreasing. This really does affect that density of the water that's at, those deeper zones in our ocean. And it's how we can really start to separate and look at the different zones in our ocean, because depending on where you are, the pressure is different and that temperature is different. So that means that section of ocean, the water there also has a bit of a different density, okay? And if you didn't tune in last week, you can go and visit that video so you can learn further more about density, but just a quick review. Density is the amount of mass per unit volume. And, we can do this mathematically, but really when we look at density, again, everything is made up of molecules. And so we're looking at the amount of stuff in an object, okay? So if we have a blue box and a green box, as you can see here, in our blue box, if we have way more stuff, we squished in a bunch of molecules in there, compared to the green box, which only has a few molecules, even though they're about the same size, their structure has the same shape, that would be the volume. Because there's more stuff in the blue box, it's going to have a greater density, okay, than the green box that we have over here. So again, bringing this back to our ocean zones, because of the amount of pressure that's being exerted down on the water at our deeper zones in the ocean, it's pushing more of those molecules, making them more compact. That colder temperature that you have down there is also making them more compact. This is going to have those ocean zones, the water at the deeper depths, have a higher density than what we find up near the surface, where the sun is able to warm those waters, okay? And we have a higher temperature up there. And because it's closer to the surface, there's not as much pressure acting on those, okay? Hopefully this has, been giving everyone some of that background knowledge as we go through this, but now we're actually going to start to make our model, okay? Now I'm going to be making our model today using liquids that are found around the house. So as you can see here, I'm using vegetable oil, dish soap, some rubbing alcohol, and then light corn syrup, okay? I'm also using food coloring to try and tint and change the color of these various liquids. You're gonna see in a few moments when I start this model that I did some tinting a little bit better than others. Some of these liquids aren't so easy to mix food coloring into. But so this is how I, am going to break out the different zones, because all of these liquids have a different density. So it's going to cause all of these liquids to actually separate and sit at different places. So it's going to help me make that model. If you don't have these liquids at home, no worries at all, okay? Other ways that you can make a model is, as I said, if you have a piece of paper in front of you, you can make a grid. So you can make a long rectangle, which will look like our graduated cylinder that I'm going to use. And as I add in zones, and I'm going to start by putting our zones at the bottom and then building it up. As I add in those zones, you can start by coloring different blocks for each of those ocean zones. Maybe you have Legos at home. Legos are a great way to build a model, okay? So similar, whether it's now or after the fact, you can go get some Legos and you can color block to make the different zones of the ocean, okay? Or if it's a beautiful sunshiny day where you are, like it is where I am today, go outside, use some sidewalk chalk, and you can make your own model or make your own picture showing all of the zones in our ocean, okay? So hopefully everyone can follow along and do this at home in some way or form. But again, I want to give that reminder, if you're going to do this at home, please don't go and raid your kitchen, okay? Especially right now when we're trying to really minimize the amount of times we're going to the store, all right? And some of these resources are a little harder to find right now than others. So please do not take anything that you know, without asking an adult at your house, okay? That's an important one. Now to make this model and to measure everything out, I used some measuring cups. And I am going to use a graduated cylinder today, just because I can easily lift this up and show it in the camera better. But for some of you at home, if you don't have a graduated cylinder, an empty pasta jar can work just as well. or a mason jar like you see photographed here, okay? So you have options for, how you could make this model at home if you are going to use different liquids, all right? And even if you don't have all the liquids at home, you can make a smaller scale model only showing some of the zones with the liquids that you actually have, all right? So how we're going to do this is we are going to start by adding in each of these different liquids, and I'm going to talk about which zone each of those liquid represents. And so all of you at home can see better, okay? And we're going to post in the comments this slide here so that if you are doing this at home, you know what liquids are used for what zones of the ocean. So I know everyone can see everything better here, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna flip back to our camera view so that you guys can see as I'm pouring all these things in. And hopefully I'm not gonna spill this all over my kitchen table today, but sometimes labs do in fact get messy, and that's okay. All right. So we're going to start by, as I said, we're actually going to start at depth, and then we're going to build our jar upward. Now, if you did this in the reverse and you started with the sunlight zone, because all of these liquids are different densities, it would eventually actually balance out and you're going to be able to see everything. But because of timing and filming today, we're going to load everything up all at once. Okay. So the first liquid I am going to go ahead and use is the light corn syrup, okay? And so this has a really high density. And so this is what we're going to use to make our trench zone, the deepest parts of our ocean, okay? Does anyone know which depth is, or which trench is it that is the deepest point in our ocean? The Mariana Trench, very good, okay? So this is going to represent that really deep trench zone, that Mariana Trench, okay? So I already measured out for each of these liquids, you can use about 3/4 of a cup. You really have to look at and have a good understanding of, whichever type of jar you're gonna build your ocean zones into. If I was using something smaller, I might only use a 1/2 cup of each liquid, okay? But so I'm going to take my corn syrup and and you're going to be able to see, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pour this into our graduated cylinder here, okay? And you can really tell how dense this liquid, it's taken a really long time to actually pour in. But notice what I did is I used the food coloring, all right? Because we know when we get down to those deepest depths of our ocean, sunlight doesn't actually penetrate down to those low depths, okay? Don't mind the water looking in the background. That would be my dog just grabbing a drink of water. But so you can see I have this nice trench zone that is forming down to the bottom here. So I mixed all my colors of food coloring to give it that really dark coloration, since we know as we get down, sunlight isn't penetrating down to those deeper depths of the ocean. And so we can see, that nice dark color there, okay? So this is going to be our trench. Now, if we started at the bottom and now we have to make our ascent up towards the surface, what is the next zone we are going to encounter? This is where all of the dead particles and different things that are up in higher levels sink down to, and they create a layer of what we call ooze. Okay, so does anyone know what we call this? This would be the abyss, okay? So for our abyss, this is where we're going to use that dish soap, all right? So this dish soap, I did put a bit of a red tint into because I wanted to try to have maybe a purplish color so I can see a bit of a difference between the corn syrup and the dish soap, so I can see the difference in zones between the trench and the abyss. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna pour this in, okay? And so now you can actually see a bit here how we do have those two zones. So see how it's really dark here, and then we have more of that purpley tone right here, okay? Now, again, this is where I said I really tried my hardest with the food coloring to get good different shades, but the red dye tinted a little bit quicker into my dish soap here, so it's a little closer in color than I wanted it to be. But when I get the light hitting this just right, you can see how we have those two color tones. So again, we have our deepest layer here. This is the trench. Those are the deepest parts of our ocean. And then on top, we have the abyss, okay? And that can be, you know, that seafloor, that layer of ooze from all the dead particles and things that have sunk down onto the, you know, ocean floor area there, trenches being deeper depths down in between with those crevices. And so, you know, something to think about as we are making these dark layers, is there ocean life down there in those deepest parts of our ocean? If you read the story yesterday, you should know this answer. Yes, okay. We do in fact have living things down there, all right, in these deeper depths, okay? And I just got a note that I'll try in a few moments when we get to the end, I'll use a flashlight to really illuminate this so we can actually see those different zones. So the next zone, if we are, again, we started at the bottom, we're ascending our way to the surface. So we started in the trench, we went to the abyss, and now we're gonna go up to the midnight zone, all right? And so for the midnight zone, I actually used tap water, okay? And for that tap water, I used a bit of green food coloring, all right? And so with that green food coloring here, okay, then you can see that tap water is sitting right on top of our abyss and then our trench zone that we had down here, okay? So we've got 3 layers here, all right? In that midnight zone, when we start exploring and looking at that midnight zone, okay? Anyone know what are some of those properties about our midnight zone? All right, so this is where, all right, we do have some of our larger living marine animals. This is where that marine snow is actually going to start to fall around here, which again, this is different dead plankton, different scraps of dead things that are making their way down to the abyss. You can see that in this zone. But this is also the depths where we find some giant squid. Does anyone know what eats giant squid? The sperm whales, okay? So then we do have some of those sperm whales that are going to dive down, and they could also be found in this midnight zone, okay? And then we're gonna continue our ascent up, okay? This is where now our next zone we're going to run into is the twilight zone. And so for the twilight zone, I used some vegetable oil, okay? And I mixed in some food coloring to try to make it not so yellow and give it a bit of a blue tint to it, because when we start to get into the twilight zone, all right, we have very little light that's going to enter down into this area. But the food coloring that I had on hand didn't mix with our vegetable oil because they're such different liquids, they're not able to mix. So you can see those little particles that are in there, all right? So it didn't tint it how exactly I wanted it to, but I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pour this in. I'm gonna pour it nice and slow. And that vegetable oil is going to separate, because it's a different density, all right? We know oil is less dense than water. It is actually going to sit right on top of our tap water there, okay? So we're starting to be able to better see. All right, so far we have 4 of our ocean zones. The deepest being the trench, all right? So this is where that pressure is the highest. This is where we see those really cold temperatures. Next, we have the abyss, all right, where we have that layer of ooze on our ocean floor. Along the abyss, this is where we can find some of those hydrothermal vents. This is some underwater volcanic activity, so we do see some warm temperatures there. But because when we have a warmer temperature, there's more energy, that water with that warm temperature is then actually going to rise up in the water column. So after our abyss here, then we are going to go into our midnight zone, okay? As we start to continue our way up, we get to that midnight zone where that marine snow is going to fall. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to get up to our twilight zone, all right? And our last, right at the surface up there, that last zone we're going to go ahead and look at is what? Anyone know what we call the zone that's up near the surface? The sunlight zone, very good. And so for the sunlight zone, this is where I'm using that rubbing alcohol, okay? And so if I take this and I added a little bit of blue, so it'd be a light blue color, and this is going to be less dense than our vegetable oil. So it's going to take a moment because as it goes in, even though I pour it slowly, all right, it's going to mix in a little bit, but then after a moment, you're going to see those colors actually start to break out and separate again because of their densities. And so as we look in here, you can start to see right here, because of that different density, it is going to start to stagger and change. So we can really see that separation starting to take place here, okay? And so as we go ahead, I'm going to go back so we can review those ocean zones, all right? So now let's start at the top and we're going to work our way down, okay? So that top zone, so now, all right, we made our way to the surface. We're going to dive back into our ocean and explore those zones. And as I'm doing this, I'm going to let this sit flat on the table so my hand doesn't shake it, so we can really then after see how these liquids of different densities are going to settle out. So that first zone right there at the surface being the sunlight zone. And this is where we have photosynthesis occurring, okay? And we see a lot of filter feeding animals swimming around the sunlight zone. We see a lot of wildlife that lives in the sunlight zone. But the key to the sunlight zone is that sunlight is actually, penetrating into the water and allowing plant life to grow, allowing photosynthesis to occur. All right, and that's the base of our ocean food chain, is that converting sun energy into a food source. All right, if we dive down a little bit deeper, that is when we're going to get to the twilight zone. And as we go down into the twilight zone, there's really not enough sunlight for plants to survive. This is where we start to see some of those marine animals that have larger eyes. So that little bit of sunlight that does reach down to this zone, they can better allow in so that they can improve their eyesight, living at those deep depths where there's just very little light, not enough light for any plant life to survive, okay? As we get down into the twilight zone, this is also where we're going to be able to see some bioluminescent animals be able to live, okay? Or the bioluminescent animals. And that is having the ability to actually glow. So it's a chemical reaction that's occurring that results in energy being released in the form of light. Then if we keep going, all right, then we get down into the midnight zone. And this is where that marine snow is going to fall, okay? And I apologize, I just realized I forgot to have that screen share going as I was going through this so you could all see as I'm talking about those ocean zones. So again, that sunlight zone, that's where we have photosynthesis occurring. That twilight zone, where we have some of those animals with special eyes, and so it's just saying we have animals that have bioluminescence, meaning that they have chemical reactions that are occurring, which allow energy to be released in the form of light. And then we go down and we have that midnight zone. And so this is that really dark zone. And this is where we're going to see, that marine snow fall. Marine snow being, dead plankton, the dead particles off of marine life that has died. And it's all kind of floating in this layer as it's making its way down to sink down into the abyss, okay? This is where we can find some of those giant squid. And we know that sperm whales feed on giant squid. So as we read our story yesterday, we learned and saw how this is where we can sometimes see what we call the battle of the giants, those sperm whales going after these giant squid, all right? And then we go down and we have the abyss, all right? And again, all of that marine snow that is falls down into the abyss, and this is where it's going to create that layer of ooze, okay? And that's really that ocean floor. It's also where we can see some of those hydrothermal vents. And then the deepest parts of our ocean being the trenches, okay? But remember, even when you get all the way down to those depths, this is where we can still see life being found, okay? So we find living things at all of the various zones in our ocean, okay? So if you were at home and you used this worksheet, or you used, a scrap piece of paper, all right, what this should look like is, again, we have that first zone, if we're diving in, is that sunlight zone. Then we have our twilight zone. we go down and we hit the midnight zone, and then we get into the abyss, and then the deepest parts of our ocean being the trench, okay? So going down now with if you are gonna make a liquid model like we made, you can do that, but you can also color in this worksheet and make each of these zones a different color. And you can also maybe do some research and find what different animals live at these different parts, all right? So I'm gonna stop our screen share again. And actually, before I do that, I am going to grab a flashlight. That was a great idea from my coworker, Kristen. So let me just grab that flashlight, because hopefully by illuminating this, it'll better enable everyone to be able to see how our liquids that we have used of different densities are able to help us make that model, all right? So by shining this over here on the side or from the back, all right, hopefully now everyone can really see how, because the liquids we used are all different densities, they separated out to help us make that model of our ocean zones, okay? And as I said, I do apologize because some of these I mixed and the food coloring came out a little faster, so it's not the best in seeing the difference in coloration as we go from the deep trench all the way up. Ooh, if I get the flashlight right there, that actually shows it pretty good. But I only have a limited amount of these liquids, and so I didn't have enough to make a second for some of these. So this was the best we were able to do during these times. But so this is definitely something that you can try at home. Again, if you don't want to use the different liquids, then you can use, that worksheet that we shared, and you can do this that way. By coloring in the different zones to the ocean. You can go outside with chalk or use Legos or other things that you can find around the house to make that model to show your understanding of how we have these different ocean zones, okay? Something else that you can go on to do today to further your learning, all right, is we posted these other two worksheets. So one is just reviewing the lesson that we went through today and thinking back on what we said about that's going to happen with pressure and temperature. But then also, a writing exercise for you to do. As we talk about and listen about the different ocean zones, maybe, it makes you really excited and really curious to go ahead and look at and learn about a few of these different ocean zones. If you could be an ocean explorer and to travel to one of these, which one would you actually travel to? So we have a writing proposal that you can do, because as a scientist, if you're going to go and explore an area, sometimes you need permissions to the people who manage that area. So depending on where it is, that could be from the state, it could be from the federal government. Or you might need to request for a grant funding to be able to go and explore. So you actually have to be able to write and explain why you want to go and do what you're going to do and why it could be important for the general good of everyone. So we want you to actually think about this and write a proposal. If you could travel to any ocean zone, where would you go? And why is it you want to go there? What are you hoping to learn? What challenges could you face? All right, as we go down, as we talked about, that pressure is going to increase. So even scuba divers can only go down to a certain depth, all right? And over the years, engineers have had to actually create different vessels to go dive deeper down to those different parts of the ocean, okay? So these are some things that you can do to extend your activity today at home. So thank you all so much for joining us this morning. I encourage you all to go make your own model, whether it's using Legos, whether it's using liquids of different densities, going outside and using chalk, but I encourage everyone to go ahead and take what they learned today, learning about the ocean zones, and make their own model at home. Thank you so much for joining. Have a good one.